Okay, so here we are about an hour and a half, about an hour and a half later. We've got the dough here, which is nice and proved, and I've got my peel here, my flat tray. In a jar here I've got some fine semolina flour, and I'm going to just put this on the peel like this. Try and put a nice even layer. The reason this is in a jar is because I scoop it up and reuse it, because a lot of it just gets left on the worktop, so I reuse it. Try to be economical with these things. Okay, so I'm covering this fairly well because we've got quite a wet dough, and the last thing I want is for the pizza to stick to this and not go into the oven. Okay, so that's ready. I'll just put that out of the way for a minute. What I'm now going to do is put a nice layer of semolina flour on the worktop. It's quite a thick layer, this, but as I say, it's reusable, so don't be afraid of lathering it on so that we've got as much as we need. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is get my dough and begin. Incidentally, at this point I've got all of my toppings prepared. Okay, so we're getting ready to actually go into the oven with this now. So let's have a look how we are. There's the dough on the cloth, and I need to get that dough off the cloth. Now the reason, you might be thinking, well, why did I not put the dough in the bowl and put some cling film over it like I did before? Well, the reason for that is because we need to have the flexibility of the cloth. If it was in the bowl, I'd have to dig it out with the bowl scraper, and it might destroy some of the bubbles that are in this lovely dough. So with it being on the cloth, I don't have to pull it out of the bowl or anything. I can just gently maneuver it off the cloth because of the flexibility of this cloth. That's the whole point. But of course, if I just put my hand on there and turn it over onto my hand, it's going to stick. I could put some semolina flour on my hand, but you can see that not a lot of it sticks. And that's really the beauty of the semolina flour. We use it because it doesn't really stick to the pizza. So on the finished pizza, you know, the semolina flour might be underneath it, but it won't. It'll just stay behind. You won't be eating too much of it. Whereas if you use flour, what happens is it gets incorporated into the dough, and it's not quite such a good effect. But I don't. The semolina flour doesn't stick to your hands, so it's no good for sort of transferring the dough. So I've got some flour here, which I'm just going to put on my hands like this, and now I'm going to very quickly get this dough and transfer it onto that semolina flour. So we've finished with our cloth here, so I'm just going to gently take this out of the way. This cloth, incidentally, never gets washed because we want the flour to build up on the cloth so that the dough doesn't stick. So this cloth never gets washed, just keep it like that. It's good to go. Okay, so the dough now is on the semolina, and I'm just going to take a swig of cava because I quite like that. Okay, and now we're going to start to shape this into a pizza. So let me just get a little bit of flour on my hands again. I'm going to turn this over in the dough just to make sure it's properly coated in that semolina flour. And now what I'm going to do first of all is get my fingers and make like an army of fingers walking towards the edge of this pizza and rotate it. I'm not going all the way to the edge. I'm keeping a lip which will form the lip on the crust. I'm just marching my fingers out sort of towards the edge within a couple of centimetres, something like that. And you can see that this dough is nice and relaxed and floppy. And the reason it is because I left it for that hour and a half after the fermentation and after shaping it into that ball. And the reason I leave it is just so that it is nice and floppy and relaxed. It makes it so much easier. Okay, I'm just going into the second phase. I'm going to dip it in the semolina again, just to make sure that nothing sticks, okay? And the next phase of this, you can see these bubbles are already just in here, and on the crust there's some nice bubbles there. We want to keep those if we can. The next phase is to do what I call a little wave around the edge. So we're waving and sort of stretching that edge out, rotating and waving and waving and waving. Again, we're preserving the edge and just waving and making sure that we preserve the edge. We're sort of stretching out that edge and rotating as we go. It's getting a little bit bigger, as we can see. Just rotate and stretch that edge. Okay, and when you're happy that you've done enough of that, the pizza's now probably about, if you look at the peel, the pizza's probably about, you know, 60%, 2/3 of what we need it to be. I'm going to dip it back in this semolina again, just to make sure we don't get any sticking. Bring it back over here, do a bit more of that waving. I'm just going to get some more flour on my hands so that they don't stick to the pizza. Keep on doing that wave, stretching the edge, preserving that rim. And when we get it to about that sort of size, what I'm going to do now is start to slap it from hand to hand. This doesn't take very long. I'm just trying to keep that clean there. Now, when you slap it from one hand to another, pick it up basically and start slapping it from one hand to another. And the idea is you start with the hand here and slap over at 90 degrees onto this hand, and then take this hand and slap over 90 degrees. So you're rotating, and the pizza will dangle over your hand and stretch naturally, and you're rotating it and stretching it, rotating it and stretching it like that. So once again, I'm just going to get a little bit of flour on my hands only and on the pizza. Well, that's not supposed to be there, you didn't see that. Okay, and I'm going to lift this up now onto my hand, clean the worktop off and stretch and slap across. I'm not particularly brilliant at this, I need a bit of practice, but because the dough's nice and relaxed, you can see that it's very quickly growing in size. Okay, and soon we've got quite a decent sized pizza there, and this is about the right size for our peel. So I'm just going to clean that semolina flour off there, because we're going to reuse that, and I want to lift this pizza now onto my peel. This is a little bit tricky, but I'm just going to get my hands underneath it and transfer it onto there, and just stretch it gently into the corners of the peel, again preserving that rim, making sure you don't destroy that, and make it about the right size for the peel. So there we are. Okay, now what we're ready to do is top the pizza. So I'll bring my ingredients across. There's one lot there, you can see there's a nice big bubble there, that's good. There's some ingredients there. Put what you like on the pizza, obviously, it's nice to have a good selection of ingredients. One tip I would say is don't overload it, because if you overload that pizza, you'll find that it doesn't cook properly underneath. Now the first thing I'm going to do is put some passata on here. Now remember not to put too much of anything, so we'll just put what I think is about enough on the base of that pizza. I think that's enough actually, I'm not going to go mad with it. Just going to get a big spoon and spread that out a little bit. This is not an exact science, especially after a couple of glasses of cava, but we'll do our best. Okay, now I'm going to put the garlic on next. So I've got the garlic under these tomatoes here, just so that it doesn't oxidise whilst we're waiting to use it. I'm just going to sprinkle this garlic, just sliced fresh garlic. Don't use that manky garlic out of a jar, because it's full of citric acid, it's manky. Okay, now I'm going to put my tomatoes on there. Just a few sliced cherry tomatoes. I don't put many of these because, again, they're quite wet and it will stop the pizza base cooking. I've got a fresh chilli chopped up, so I'm just going to spread that out as best I can. And I've got some peppers. Just a few peppers there. The key to this is to keep moving, right? You don't really want this pizza to stick, so keep on moving as quickly as you can. I've got some onion slices here, well, they're very, very small pieces of onion here. I'm just going to put them on. Okay, just like that. It's not an exact science, as you can see. On they go. What else have we got? We've got some cheese here. I'm just going to arrange that. This is mature cheddar. I actually quite like that on the pizza, so I'll just pop that on. I've got some assorted olives here without stones now. And I've got a sliced up cooked sausage for one side because the other half quite likes that. And for my side I've got some rather more sophisticated selection of Italian meats and things. Now notice what I'm doing here. The garlic went underneath. The reason for that is so that it doesn't burn, because the little pieces of garlic in the 250-degree heat of the oven would soon burn away to nothing and you wouldn't even know they were there. So the garlic's underneath. The meats, on the other hand, you want them to sear nicely on the top, so they are on the top. And I've got also some anchovies here, which I like very much on a pizza, but the other half doesn't. And I've also got some smoked salmon. I've never tried this before on a pizza, but I'm putting some on because I'm a bit short of anchovies, to be quite honest. So we'll pop that on and see how it goes. And the next thing we want is, the final thing is a selection of dried herbs. Okay, we're ready to go into the oven now with this. So hold on tight, folks. Okay, and here we go. Just going to open this oven really quickly, pull out the stone and just shake that pizza onto that stone. There we go. In it goes.